Hello. Okay, so this is part 3 of multiplying polynomials. We are going to today multiply a binomial times a trinomial. So remember that a binomial is something that has 2 terms. A trinomial is something that has 3 terms. Okay, so we're going to have to do this a little bit different than the way we did a binomial times a binomial. Let's get started. Here we have x minus 3 times the trinomial x squared minus 5x plus 6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by multiplying this x times this x squared, and that gives me x to the 3rd power. Now I'm going to multiply the x times the negative 5, and please, I'm sorry, my smartboard is really messing up and I don't know how to fix it right now. X times negative 5x, which gives me negative 5x squared. Okay, then I need to multiply x times 6. That gives me a positive 6x. Okay, so I've multiplied my first term x by every single term in the trinomial, the x squared, the negative 5x, and the 6. Now I'm going to multiply the negative 3 times every term in my trinomial. So that gives me negative 3 times x squared, which is negative 3x squared. Then I'm going to multiply the negative 3 times the negative 5x. That gives me a positive 15x. Remember, negative 3 times negative 5, positive 15x. Then lastly, I'm going to multiply the negative 3 times the 6, which gives me a negative 18. So what I've just done was multiply every single term in the binomial x minus 3 times every single term in x squared minus 5x plus 6. Now the only thing I have left to do here is combine like terms, simplify what we just came up with. So I look at my first term, x to the 3rd, and don't see any other x to the 3rd. So that one is going to get left alone. Now I need to look for my x squareds. I see here that I have a negative 5x squared and here a negative 3x squared. That is going to give me a negative 8x squared. Okay, then I'm going to look for my x terms. I see here that I have a 6x and here a 15x. 15x plus 6x gives me 21x. And then I look for my constant and I see negative 18. Now this is my simplified answer. It is written in standard form. So we are good to go. Sorry about this disaster. I don't know what is going on with my smartboard. All right, next example. Again, another binomial times a trinomial. I'm going to multiply my 3x by every single term in the trinomial. So I have 3x times x squared. That gives me 3. Now x times x squared, remember, is x to the 3rd. Then I had to multiply my 3x times a negative 5x. 3 times negative 5, that gives me negative 15. X times x, x squared. 3x times 2, that gives me a positive 6x. Okay, now it's time to multiply my 4. I'm going to multiply my 4 by every single term in the trinomial. So I have positive 4, positive because of that sign. Positive 4 times x squared gives me a positive 4x squared. Now positive 4 times negative 5x, that gives me a negative 20x. And then positive 4 times positive 2 gives me a positive 8. Okay, so we're done multiplying, but now we need to look to see what can we combine, what are our like terms, and then make sure we write it in standard form. So I start with my largest exponent, which is my x to the 3rd, and I see that there's no other x to the 3rd, so that one gets written alone. Now I'm looking for my x squared terms. I have a negative 15x squared and a positive 4x squared. That together gives me a negative 11x squared. Ooh, that is one weird looking 2. Then I look for my x terms. I see a 6x and a negative 20x. That gives me a negative 14x. And then lastly, our constant, 8, has nothing to combine with, so we leave it alone. written in standard form with my exponents in decreasing order, so we are finished. Okay, here's this one. The only difference in this problem is that I start with a negative, this negative 4x. So we've got to make sure that we distribute the negative 4 to everything in our trinomial. So negative 4x times 2x to the third gives us a negative 8x. Here this is x to the first power times an x to the third power. That gives us x to the fourth power. Woo, goodness. Negative 8x to the fourth. Let's see if that can't look a little better. All right. Now I multiply negative 4x times my negative x squared. And negative times a negative is a positive 4. X times x squared. That gives me 3x to the third. Then I need to multiply negative 4x times the 1. Negative 4x times 1 is simply negative 4x. Okay, now I'm going to multiply my 6 times everything in the trinomial. Positive 6 times 2x to the third gives me a positive 12x to the third. Positive 6 times negative x squared, a positive times a negative gives me a negative 6x squared. And then lastly, positive 6 times positive 1 gives me a positive 6. Okay, you know what to do now. See what you can combine. Write it in standard form. I see my highest exponent is this x to the fourth. That's going to be what's written first. Then now I'm ready for my x to the third. I only see one x to the third here. Okay, so I have nothing to combine that one with. So I have plus 12x to the third. Now I'm looking for my x squareds. I see a negative 6x squared. Next would come our x's. I have a positive 4x minus 4x. That's just 0, 4x minus 4x. So I don't have to write anything there. And then last, my constant, plus 6. Okay, there would be your answer. All right, let's do this one. 1 minus x, that quantity to the third power. Remember from part 2 of this lesson, when we had something maybe like 1 minus x to the second power, we had to write 1 minus x times 1 minus x. Well, here it's to the third power, so that just means we're going to have 3 of them. Okay? We can't multiply all 3 of these things at the exact same time, so I just have to take 2 of them at a time. So what I'm going to do first is multiply this binomial times binomial. Whatever I get from that, I multiply by 1 minus x. That would be the same thing, guys, as if I told you to multiply 2 times 3 times 4. What you would do is you would choose 2 of them to do first. Okay, maybe the 2 times 3 to get 6. Then you would multiply that result times 4 to get 24. Same exact thing is going on here. Okay, so I first need to multiply 1 times 1 to get 1. 1, here I'm using FOIL, 1 times a negative x gives me a negative x. Inside term, negative x times 1 gives me negative x. And last term, negative x times negative x gives me a positive x squared. Now I need to multiply that times 1 minus x. But if I look at this, I can see that my negative x and negative x, I can combine those two things, right? Negative x minus x, that just gives me a, that gives me a 1 minus 2x. Okay, so I have 1 minus 2x plus x squared times 1 minus x. Now this is a trinomial times a binomial. We can rewrite this if we want so that the binomial comes first. That might look a little bit more familiar to you. Okay, either way, it doesn't matter because remember 4 times 6 is the same thing as 6 times 4. So whichever one you want to be in the front is just fine. Okay, now just for time's sake, I'm going to leave you guys with this one and see if you can work it out by yourself. But this is just like all the other problems I've done today, a binomial times a trinomial. All right, last example. Find the area of this figure. Well, it's a rectangle. How do we find the area of any rectangle? Area of a rectangle is simply the length times the width. Okay, so that's precisely what I'm going to do here. I'm going to multiply the length times the width, or width times length, either way. So I'm going to multiply x plus 3, that's a binomial, times my trinomial, x squared plus 4x minus 2. Sorry about that atrocious looking x there. Oh, goodness. All right. So, you guys know how to do this. X times x squared gives me x to the third. X times 4x gives me 4x squared. X times a negative 2 gives me a negative 2x. I've taken care of the x, now I need to take care of this 3. So I say 3 times x squared gives me 3x squared. This is a plus sign. 3 times 4x gives me a positive 12x, and then 3 times negative 2 gives me a negative 6. All I need to do now is combine my like terms, and we'll have the area. I don't see any other x to the thirds, so that one stands alone. 4x squared plus 3x squared gives me 7x squared. And negative 2x plus 12x would give me a positive 10x. And then I don't have any other constants except for my negative 6. So the area of our rectangle is x to the third plus 7x squared plus 10x minus 6. All right, you guys may get started on your homework now, working some practice problems, and we'll be here to help you out. Hope you have a great day.